Welcome to Inside Games, the only gaming news channel brave enough to be excited about pricey new tech in this day and age, but it looks neat, and as a PC enthusiast, it's basically the handheld I think I've been waiting for. I don't know, Bruce, what's your top of the line take on the... Oh, let me make sure I get the name right. There's an order to these brands, and I want to make sure I don't mess it up.
You have to say ROG, too.
You do?
Not ROG. You do. Yeah, I was talking to somebody last night about it.
All right, thank you for the clear... Okay, ROG... Xbox Ally X.
That's right. That's what it is. You got it right, Lawrence. Good job.
Man, those wizards at Microsoft sure do know how to name things, don't they? But mouthful aside, I don't know. It was great. But Bruce, yeah, what is your take on it?
Yeah. So just to be clear, I did not get to see this thing. I only got to talk to Lawrence and actually a bunch of other people at Microsoft and other journalists about the ROG Xbox Ally X. So I was not privileged enough, but they did let Lawrence in. Lawrence got to play with it. And so I only have questions about this. That'll be my role in this episode. I guess my first question, Lawrence, is knowing that you already have an ROG Ally, you already have the handheld, that's a PC basically. What is the difference between the ROG Ally and the Xbox Ally X?
Ooh, couple things. So I think the hardware and the battery are different. These are upgraded units, bigger capacity battery. The sides have controller grips on the Xbox branded ROG Ally. And I'll talk about the feel of it and stuff like that in a minute, but that's a pretty big difference. The one I have now, it's just kind of rounded on the sides. There's paddles on the back and bumpers and buttons. It's got the full controller layout. It's just more in a flat tablet-like factor. So you got those big old grips on the side. And then I think the biggest thing is the software. This will come with a customized version of Windows that is essentially the streamlined, game-forward, all of the bloat stripped-out version of Windows that I think we've even described before. A very thin layer of Windows upon which the Xbox app is running, and then that collects all of your games on your PC, not just Xbox ones specifically. They were very, they drilled home that point, that any game you have from any store will be collected in that tile grid that the system boots right to, and then you can launch any game from that, and it'll launch in this pared down shell of Windows. It has a really cool task switching thing. It's almost like Android, but yeah, it's super focused, and yeah, a lot of the bloat of Windows is gone, which only helps to enhance the performance and the battery life. So that's kind of the whole thing. So I guess to summarize it, the form factor, grips on the side, and then the software itself, being much more tuned for gaming as opposed to a multi-purpose device, which is what Windows typically is.
Yeah, that was always my number one question about this is will it run Steam? That's always right, the big question. Will it run Steam in addition to all the other things? It sounds like it will. It sounds that's which is good.
It will. I'm a little curious about how, So okay, they didn't show this part. They didn't show a third-party or non-Xbox game running. The only game we saw was Gears of War Reloaded, which for a contemporary Unreal Engine game, it ran at 1080p 60 FPS, and it looked great. The display itself is 1080p 120 hertz, so you can get even smooth, buttery motion with some lower spec games, but it looked really good, super playable, kind of one of those miracle moments where you realize you're holding an even better version of a full console game that came out a while ago, 15 years at this point. Anyway, but yeah, so what I'm really curious about, and that we didn't see demonstrated, is what happens when you launch a game from this Xbox app that relies on third-party DRM. So it's got to launch Steam first and then boot into that. I asked about it, and I think, well, I don't have a definite answer because there may not be one yet. They may still be figuring this out. But I think it just loads Windows. If you do that, if you launch a Steam game, it just loads Windows, then loads Steam, and then launches your game. So I'm extrapolating here fully. This is all theoretical. So I wonder if the performance gains you get in terms of battery and memory maybe go away if you have to launch another launcher. It's also possible that by then, or maybe some of these third parties come and play ball a little bit, where they find a very streamlined way to add that authentication inside of the pared down version of Windows. So if you need to launch the EA app or Ubisoft app, or God forbid, Epic Game Store or whatever, that hopefully those clients then come to the table and they're like, hey, rising tide, all ships, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we'll patch in a way to sign into this store through the Xbox app or through some other Windows process, so you don't have to load full fat Windows just to get into that library. But in terms of organization, it's very forward and platform agnostic, which is nice, even though Xbox is right there in the title. But I do like that at least right now, they're speaking a good PC game, which is that this platform is a PC, so it's open. You can do whatever you want with it. We're just trying to create a very direct way for you to enjoy, of course, Xbox games, but maybe anything else.
Yeah, this, at first glance, sounds like the Steam Deck that we want. So the Steam Deck is obviously right. You know, it plays everything on Steam, which is awesome. But then also you got to kind of like mod the Steam Deck to launch other things. And maybe Xbox learned that lesson with this and instead was like, we'll make it do everything. I don't know. But it sounds very promising. I'll ask you a question about the screen very specifically. Like I said, I know you have the older Ally, but does it look like a similar screen? Is it a better screen? What do you think?
It's similar, I think. It was kind of a dim room we were playing in, and the brightness was maxed out. It wasn't staring into the sun bright. And some portables do have like OLED displays with crazy crisp displays. It was good. It was playable. It was a little bit better than Switch 2, I think, which is kind of a dim display. But really just like seeing a crisp 1080p image at 60 FPS on a handheld screen was kind of the miracle. I didn't have a ton of time with it. I think we got to noodle with it in my hands for maybe 5 to 10 minutes. So that wasn't a ton of time to like hyper interrogate the actual image quality, but pretty like good enough. Absolutely. Good enough for like contemporary high spec games, which is something I think we're used to sort of trading off. With the Ally, like it's got a good display, but most of it, like if I were to play Gears of War on that, it would be slathered in so many layers of like resolution scaling that all the ghosting and stuff would kind of degrade the image, even if the display's good enough to to display it crisply. So the fact that their processing could keep up with the game and generate a steady series of high resolution images helps the display quality a lot too.
I wanted to dive in a little more on the controllers too, because one of the things I've never liked about the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally, the original, those controllers always feel a little wonky. I don't know what it is. They just always felt a little strange to me, like it wasn't an Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller. The companies that have been doing this for years, so it looks great that they've replaced those with the actual Xbox paddles. Did that feel better to you?
Oh yeah, it did. I think the biggest thing about the controller is the grips, and I mean that in like multiple senses of the words. They're big. I'm used to handhelds kind of having maybe hard bezels or they're thin, so when they're resting in your palm, it kind of bites in after a while. The presenter from Asus was very clear that like used the phrase marathon gaming sessions multiple times. Both in reference, I think, to the battery life, but also the comfort of the device itself. This is really designed to like maximize surface area contact with your palm, which feels really good. Like it just kind of feels like a glove, really. So I could definitely see holding it for a long time. It actually wasn't that heavy either, even though the unit itself is actually quite a bit thicker. I think because they have those massive grips on there, they have a lot more liberty with making the device itself pretty thick. So there's a generous heat sink in there. But despite that, yeah, it wasn't super heavy like I was expecting. Usually large batteries and large heat sinks mean a lot of weight. No, it was pretty light. And what I noticed is when I was holding it in the grips and had it on my lap, the screen is just a bit tilted. So there's kind of a natural viewing angle when your hands are sort of at their natural holding length. In terms of the buttons and like triggers and sticks, those felt pretty similar to the Ally that I have now, which is good enough. You know, it's not like a $200 Pro controller with like micro switches and clicky everything, but certainly comfortable enough to play a game, and all the buttons that you need are there. I did see a couple of comments. It's funny you mentioned Steam OS, or rather the Steam Deck. I did see somebody wondering if you could install Steam OS on this. Yeah, probably. I don't know why you'd want to, but you could. I think for people that just play purely through Steam, but also like no trackpads. So I think some people really like that. We don't have that. But the slim version of Windows was pretty much made to wrap around a controller, because desktop Windows is not made for controller at all. Very awkward. Like you move the pointer around with an analog stick, clicks are on the triggers, so it works well enough. I think like you had said last evening, you can also just use your finger to like swipe up the start menu and then hit a game. That's typically how I do it. But this is like, it boots right to the Xbox experience and everything's on a nice grid. So you can just D-pad over to whatever you want and boom, launch it right away. Even the login screen they showed now has controller support, so you can go down and like get on a Wi-Fi or put in your login pin with just button presses that are mapped to like a numpad. So that I think they're wrapping the OS around controller use, which I think will make it a lot more comfortable. Yeah, I think the actual machinery of the controller itself, they do have impulse triggers, rumble triggers. I felt a little bit of that playing Gears of War. The rumble was, it's not as contemporary as, say, a Switch 2. The rumble in that feels a lot more nuanced and intense. This just felt like a nice little motor in the triggers, so that's nice to have, I guess. Just another, like, typical kind of AAA couch-based console feature that now we can move to a handheld. So that was cool to see. Yeah, I'm not sure. Do you feel like that gave you a good idea about how the controller feels?
Yeah, no, it totally does. And another point I just wanted to reinforce is that it's touchscreen in the case that you're like trying to use the control, because I hate using the Xbox controller to put my password in. Hate it. So thank God it's a touchscreen. I obviously will be, because pretty much every handheld now is a touchscreen. But just to say that it is in the case that you randomly launch Windows. You can do Windows with a touchscreen, which is also not the easiest thing in the world, but it does exist.
One cute thing I noticed is that they said they called it the Ally because it's all your games, and I was like, oh gosh, okay. I didn't know that that's where that name came from. Cute little thing. They even showed, I guess, something they called XG Mobile, which is this external brick that you can plug into the Ally, and it's a 5090 laptop GPU. So essentially, like with those two together, you basically have a high-end PC or something close to it, mid to high-end. So yeah, there's extensibility there already just because of the PC ecosystem. Problem is we don't know how expensive this thing's going to be, so suggesting buying an even more expensive brick to sit next to it is a little silly. But I also noticed in terms of the controls, this thing's kind of packed with buttons now. In addition to 2 sticks, four face buttons, 4 shoulders, paddles on the back. Now you've got, you have the Armory control button, which is already on the Ally. That's basically this like tray that pops out and has a lot of quick settings on it. You can like downclock the Ally to save battery. It's got some like presets and stuff. You can turn on and off various bits, airplane mode, turn off a Wi-Fi. You can switch the control mode that has like a desktop mode and a gameplay template. All that stuff's collected in there. Normally, I don't really like proprietary software, but it's actually very functional and very fast. So it's got that. Now it has an additional library button. This is kind of part of the trimmed down version of Windows, but no matter what you're doing, if you tap that library button, it takes you right to a screen with a grid of all your games. Right away. So that's pretty neat. That's pretty good for navigation, I think. And then there's the guide button, the Xbox button, which there's actually a clip, Shooklin, please look this up. There's a clip of Sarah Bond describing how momentous it is that the guide button is now on a rhombus instead of a circular button. So this is a red letter day, everybody. The edges are sharp now.
The Xbox Nexus on the rhombus is such a beautiful representation of the marriage of the precision, the robustness of Asus's design, and the power of Xbox.
It's actually pretty functional. So you hit it, and it normally does what Game Bar does, or at least Game Bar in compact mode. Pops up that overlay with all the tabs on top. You can go to your friends, achievements, or whatever if you care about that stuff. I noticed that also Armory Crate is now embedded in Game Bar too. So if you really want to, you can get to all the handheld settings through that. And here's the real magic. If you hold the guide button, it pops up Task Switch. So kind of like Android now, it'll like shrink the game down and you can go through this horizontal list of all the applications that are running, and then you can swap back to the Xbox app and launch another game, or another game that you have, or maybe a Windows process. They didn't really show that. Like I didn't see them tabbing out to Notepad or something like that. But they did mention swapping to Discord. So that's an implication that like non-gaming applications would work under this sort of trimmed down version of Windows, which is also pretty exciting, I think.
Okay, so another question that I had actually got to ask specific people at Xbox last night was a lot of people were asking Xbox, hey, does the, saying the name, ROG Xbox Ally X, does that play every Xbox game? And the answer is no, it does not play every Xbox game. However, it will play any game that's Xbox Play Anywhere. So through the Xbox Play Anywhere cloud system, right, you can basically play anything that is on the cloud through the Ally X. And I thought that was kind of an interesting point because I know that they were seeing, Microsoft was seeing a lot of comments of being like, well, this doesn't play every Xbox game, so why would I get it type thing. And at least it's opened up to the cloud.
No, you mean like Xbox console games?
Basically, like let's say you wanted to play whatever, Outer Worlds 2. It may or may not run Outer Worlds 2. They were saying that they haven't fully had all the compatibility for every single video game that's on the Xbox that you could buy on the console. But if it's an Xbox Play Anywhere title, it can then be played through the cloud on this thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. I would assume like a PC, like it'll try.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So.
They didn't mention that like there would be a lot of explicit control over what they would or would not allow to run. They did mention that they would do something kind of like, it sounded a bit like Steam Deck certified to me, where if a game is like, if it performs well on mobile and it has, gamepad controls, because, Game Pass on PC has like RTS games and mouse-based games and things like that. So they were going to put like branding or badging on it to kind of show that this is a safe game to install on your handheld. That's interesting though, because I assumed that to mean like legacy Xbox console support. Because like on an Xbox console, you can download and run an Xbox 360 game. That is not something that this will do, but it is a PC, so there are ways.
Yeah, I think they mean like if you launch the Xbox app on the Ally X, that you'll probably be able to play most games on it. New games, however, like you said, they're probably going to have a certification system where it's like, this is certified to play on the Ally X or whatever, but then like Outer Worlds 2, maybe not, because it's like brand new and there's a lot of processing power required that this may not have that a full Series X does. However, again, Xbox Play Anywhere, you can play it through the cloud if that game is on the cloud, if on the Xbox Play Anywhere system. So
they're really trying to connect up all the flow through multiple devices. That this is an Xbox campaign. One of the things I think that they leaned into hard, reiterated a number of times, is that when you boot up the device, it has the jump back in list of all the games you've played, and that list will stay current across all of the games you play across your entire Xbox ecosystem or whatever. So you're playing a game on your console, then you switch to your handheld. The game you were playing will be right up first. You tap it, it'll update your save, and you're off to the races. That's the idea. And I also wonder if that applies to third party as well. Like if I'm playing a third party game on my PC, would I have to play it through the Xbox app so that the Xbox handheld knows that it was, well, whatever. That's kind of in the weeds, but I'm trying to think of other interesting bits they mentioned. They did kind of say that this hardware, and specifically I think the speed at which they were able to turn it around, which you might not think it's fast, but for a tech giant like Microsoft to be able to find a partner and customize their like flagship operating system in this way to launch on this hardware, I would think within the span of maybe 2 years. Who knows how long this project's actually been going on, but that feels about like when PC handheld started to take off and be maybe an interesting way to expand your audience. I don't know, I think there's validity to that. They did mention that this relationship between Xbox and Windows and Asus and AMD, now kind of this family that has a really good working relationship. And they said that this is the start of continued development. So software improvements, operating system improvements. So the other interesting bit that I kind of seized on is that there's an AI chip in the ROG Xbox Ally X. And they refer to it as a future-proofing kind of piece of hardware, which, sure, I guess. The future is AI and all that. It just makes me wonder if I wonder if there's a small hint about what the next Xbox console will be or what features it will have based on that. Like, because anyone knows Xbox does. And if they're saying like, what guts should we put in this handheld? I did see some people really mad that FSR 4 won't be supported. I guess it's 3.5. I don't know that on a handheld or a tiny screen it's going to make huge amounts of difference. But so I don't know. I think there's a fun little hint there. One thing I noticed is like as well. So I pulled up the Xbox app today just to see how similar it was to my memory of the handheld app. It's nearly identical. But a dark omen, when I opened the Xbox app today, it popped up with like a little ad for Outer Worlds 2. So that's not a great feeling. I don't want to buy a handheld and have it, immediately boot to a quick little ad telling me that Microsoft has a new game they want me to check out. But that said, I'm going to get it anyway because it's basically the exact device that I want. It's kind of, the bigness I could do without maybe, because now I need to get an even bigger case to carry this chonkler around. But the grips actually felt way better than I thought they would based on kind of how lumpy they look, I guess might be the word. but it's definitely designed for touch and not for aesthetic. And in that regard, I think it works. And yeah, the performance was out of this world. And I have the Gen 1 Ally, and its battery evaporates in about 90 minutes, depending on what you're playing. So something that's leaner and more efficient would also be great. Oh, that was the other thing they mentioned. Since they have basically trimmed out all the background processes and stuff from Windows that you don't need for gaming, now when it's in standby, it barely loses any battery. At least that's what they said. Because yeah, you put a Windows tablet or laptop or even the ROG Ally to sleep, and it's just gonna that battery just wicks away. Whereas shutting it down is pretty cumbersome and silly and PC feeling. Blech. So the idea that they made a really streamlined version of Windows on top of which the Xbox app runs, and that's kind of it, is a very exciting prospect, I think. It's the closest that the PC architecture gets to a console, because now it's just the games running largely uninterrupted, hopefully directly on through to the hardware through very efficient drivers that are customized specifically for that. Because of that, I'm not sure. There were some people wondering if you could grab this distro of Windows and use it on a desktop, which would be pretty exciting. I don't know if it's specifically queued to the ROG Xbox Ally's hardware, but it's still a PC. It still runs on API layers, so it should work. I don't know. There's a lot of promise there, and honestly, a lot more response and attentiveness to this particular market than I think Microsoft has ever shown in the past. Ever. They have game mode in Windows, and that's about as good as it gets. And then the Xbox division, specifically under Phil Spencer, has had a very strong understanding of gamer experience on the platform, and is, I think, tuned towards that. So yeah, the fact that they're converging that on a extremely high-powered handheld that's in that ecosystem, that's what I'm all about. So I don't know. Are you sold on it, Bruce? Do you want to buy one? There's no price yet.
I was going to say, you've definitely sold me on it, and I'm glad you brought up the price, because I don't think there's a release date or a price yet.
They said holiday.
Okay. All right. Holiday. All right. But we don't know the price. And I was looking up the ROG Ally, the normal Ally. Right now it's $650 on Best Buy. So $650, I would assume from...
That's for the base one, the white one?
That's the white one, yeah. And what's interesting about that is, since we're in a weird pricing structure right now with tariffs and all that other bullshit, I would have said, oh, it's coming from Microsoft, they'll probably have it cheaper because they can sell these at volume, so they'll probably... But now I'm like, I don't know that that's the case. They may charge more. They may charge more than the $650, which in that case, Lawrence, let's say this thing gets up into the $700 or $800 range. How do you feel about that?
Well, so I looked up the base model. I see it for $500.
I'm looking at the Ryzen Z1 512 gigabyte.
I think that's the fancier one, the faster one. But even still, I think that's what's in the ROG Ally. So that's an appropriate comparison. I think the Xbox one's supposed to be, well, the Z number's bigger. Instead of Z1, it's Z2. But I haven't, to be honest, I haven't dug into the specs more than that. And in a way, well, I shouldn't say that. It's going to depend on price. I don't think Xbox necessarily wants you to concern yourself with specs too much, aside from it's beefy. But yeah, I should roll around in those numbers a bit more. I guess I'm reserving judgment on the actual hardware aspects because I don't know where they're going to land at launch. If they're naming the processor, you can probably bank on that. But beyond that, I don't know if they've listed off all the bits and bobs that are in these processors yet. So that's an amount of research I haven't done. I don't know. I saw this yesterday. I'm tired as hell, so we're just getting this out as quickly as possible. But yeah, when it starts getting up, gosh, I think 750 might. Even saying that, I'm not sure. I already have one. That's the thing, and it's clumsy, and the battery sucks. But it can do it. So now I'm in this position of it's a tasty upgrade. But how much am I willing to pay for that? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. $600 maybe? I just bought a Switch 2 and it already feels outdated. That's kind of the scary thing.
Yeah, so it's getting to the point where anything over $500 for me, I'm like, I really got to think about it. That's a lot of money. And it sounds great. The system itself, the ROG Xbox Ally X, sounds awesome. I really do love everything it's doing. I know, right? Yeah, I love everything that it does. But I mean, I could see a world this comes out at $700. Yeah, and then I'm like, whoa, that one, that hits hard. It's like a truck. In addition to, oh well, they have a PlayStation or a Steam Deck or like you said, a Switch 2. It's like, boy, oh boy. We might be really squeezing everybody dry there at that point. I don't know if anybody's going to be able to find an extra $700 lying around to buy an Xbox handheld. So, but it sounds awesome.
Yeah, base Steam Deck's $400, which for the money is still the easiest or the cheapest way to get into PC gaming. I think once this ROG Xbox Ally hits, that'll probably be the easiest way to get into PC gaming. Because yeah, if you get a Steam Deck, and if you want to get out of Steam, it takes a little technical wizardry. Maybe that's upselling it a little too much, but you got to be willing to look up some technical tutorials and follow them fairly exactly. And yeah, I think what's remarkable about this, like, it has the Steam Deck experience, just not completely within Steam's ecosystem. Is that going to be worth maybe double the price? Yeah, I mean, maybe the sting of the Switch 2 will wear off by the time this comes out, and I'll be much more willing to drop money on a piece of hardware. The thing is, I found myself using the Ally a lot because, I mean, we were even saying this last night, I'm still traveling a fair amount. And it's a very handy tool to bring along, not only for gaming because of the baked-in controls, but for productivity stuff. I've edited videos on that thing, and you could do that on this as well if you want to. So it is a legitimate business tool, in addition to being now an even more customized gaming experience. So it's dead in the middle of what I use PCs for, especially handheld PCs. So I think it would be a worthwhile investment for me. I haven't bought the new Allies because they're pretty pricey and the upgrades are pretty incremental. But this one seems like it's the next generation and even further down the funnel of what I want and use it for. So I'm the exact right audience, basically. But I wonder how many of me there are out there. I can't imagine there's too much.
Well, Lawrence, thank you very much for looking into this and checking it out. I was very jealous. It sounded really cool, and it's something that I'm sure I would have enjoyed. But now I'm starting to think of the price, and I'm like, whoa! Oh my gosh! So I don't know.
Yeah, I would have loved to get your perspective on it. You have so much experience, noodling with consumer hardware and stuff like that. It would have been awesome to hear what you think.
That's all good. You've summed up everything. You've answered all the questions I had, and so now all that remains is the price and the release date. So we'll find out here, and I'm sure in the next few months.
I'm really curious to see how this sizes up. But yeah, admission time or acknowledgements, whatever. Xbox did buy us a lovely dinner, so I don't know if that paid for these opinions or not. That's kind of it. They did invite Bruce and I to, kind of like he mentioned, a series of previews. I think they split us up where we were both covering different things. So I got into the handheld thing, and then there's a couple of other previews we'll probably talk about soon, but that's the extent of it. Oh, they also gave us an Uber voucher. So there you go.
That's right. We took an Uber. You're right.
Hey, you got to let people know, man. They have a right to know, Bruce, and we're here to tell them. So yes, thank you, Xbox, for the opportunity. Thank you for making the exact right gadget for me. Just please be kind. Please be kind to my bank account, please.